I know Rick Pitino isn't taking shots at UConn and Dan Hurley, but he did today. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, a couple of quick updates. October was an incredible month for Locked On UConn, thanks to your support and especially my everydayers who are on watching and listening every day. Our community is growing really fast, exponentially, and we're thrilled to give back to Husky Ticket Project by donating 10% of our revenues to help kids go to UConn football, basketball, baseball games, whatever. We make that monthly donation, and we also support Bleeding Blue for Good and hope you'll consider supporting them too. If you're enjoying the show as much as we think you are, please take a moment to subscribe and follow wherever you listen. Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, I woke up this morning, and the first thing I saw was a text from my good buddy, Adam Zagora, who lives in New York City. And it said, check out this link. And it's essentially Rick Pitino on, Boomer and Geo. I'm sure plenty of people in Connecticut listen to that in the morning sometimes. I know it's on CBS simulcast. And he said, Danny Hurley has built one of the strongest programs in the nation. It always starts with like the niceties. And then he came down to, but I can tell you this. They're no lock this year to win the Big East, to win the national championship. Creighton and Marquette are there. We have a highly competitive team. Xavier is a highly competitive team, and they're very, very good. And he kind of left it at that. I'm going to bring in Dan Meehan, who is my partner here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, to talk about this because it sounds more like a backhanded compliment about he was like, oh, they're the Kentucky of the East, like all this other BS. This Rick Pitino used car salesman crap. And I'm not buying it, man. They're a lock to win the Big East. Let's talk about it. Dan, what are your thoughts on Tricky Ricky essentially saying that UConn, they're really good, but they're no lock. Watch out for us and others.
I would put this under the Slick Rick bucket today. Call him what you want. But it's funny. I actually woke up from a text as well. This guy just puts the what's in the seats. I woke up from a good friend of mine, big Yankees fan, longtime listener of The Fan, and Mike Francesa. First thing this morning, texted me, hey, Pitino's on at 9 a.m. on SNY this morning. I was like, okay. And cool. Sure enough, we get some quotables. I'm gonna it's early in the season. I'm not gonna kind of spin my wheels too much on Slick Rick, but these comments this morning kind of reminded me of the ones he made when he was at Iona after the tournament loss 2 years ago. I also think he might smell a little blood in the water. If there was ever he's late in the game in his coaching career. He doesn't, he's only got so many years left. And I think he brought in some notable transfer portal guys this year to St. John's that really excited that fan base, and they've looked really good through 3 games. So I think, he's seen and given them a decent shot one-on-one when he was at Iona 2 years ago. Now he's got a premier roster, some actual high-level D1 talent, brings over Kadari Richmond from Seton Hall. That defense is really good. And if there was ever going to be a chink in the armor for a UConn team, this year is probably it. Maybe, the rest of the field and these coaches see this as an opportunity, an in-between year, if you will. But yeah, I thought the comments, whether you want to call him a backhanded compliment or not, he respects Danny, if nothing else, and knows they are the class of the NCAA right now. So I'll chalk it up as that. So what are your thoughts?
I have an opposite take. I think he knows that Danny is easily bothered and can get under his skin. And so that's the game that Rick is playing. It's hey, they're awesome. They're so good. He's built a machine. Like all of the words he used, it's very calculating. And I know it's November 14th. You know, we're not in March yet. And I know that there's tons of basketball to be played. And I know UConn's figuring a few things out. But it strikes me as the type of words that a man uses when he knows that he can get. It's like I don't know if you have a brother. I have a sister. It's like if you have something that you can frustrate your sibling with. And I'm gonna say, like, this isn't like a bad word, but like my sister's least favorite word in the English language is moist.
Moist.
for whatever reason. And
that's not the
we
first time I've heard that, for the record.
And I have no idea why that is. I kind of have an idea, but just use that as an example. So Rick is doing that older brother type needling where it's like, listen, I'm a champion too. You may be the king right now, but I do sense, to your point, the blood in the water, that this could be a year we can potentially unseat you. And but that's his personality. I'm not taking like too much of like a hard line on this, but Rick he's a character. He's a character. No, you're right. And he's on the radio. Like, you're going to be on the radio promoting your team, and they ask you about UConn, who's the best team in the Big East. I don't think that they're not a lock to win the Big East. I think that makes me laugh. They're not a lock to win the national championship, because that's really hard to do, especially a third time in a row.
Yeah.
But I don't see another team that's, especially with the early Big East returns, that is going to challenge UConn in the regular season. Do you?
I agree. I agree. In conference play, I don't think it's going to be as daunting as it was last year, where they just ran through the field all year long. But I think it's probably a down year in the conference. From what we've seen so far, you had a lot of high-end talent from some of the teams that finished in the upper half of the conference go to the NBA last year. Seton Hall had a strong year last year. They haven't looked the same this year, and they get their best players stolen, in the portal by Rick. So that defense is going to be good. I picked St. John's to finish top 3 in the conference. I saw some fight in that team last year. Whether or not they actually got snubbed, but they were right on the line. Like, they were top 30 in KenPom to finish the year last year, and then they get a really good player in the transfer portal in Kadari Richmond. So that team's a good defensive team. I don't know if Providence is going to finish, top 5, top 6. They lost, the best player in the conference last year. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll move on, because I want to get to Dan's comments, but just watch your mouth, Rick. We see you. Let's he's
chumming the waters a little bit before St. John's comes to Gamble later in the season. So yeah, it should be fun.
Why don't we wait for that game before you start talking about who's a lock and who's not a lock? But anyway, when we return, we're going to talk about Dan Hurley had some really interesting comments in the post game, as he always does, about his team's slow starts, the progress that he sees. Little talk on Terrace and Jay Ross, and also the monster class that he has officially signed for 2025. We'll talk about that coming up after the break. What's up, NFL fans? Get into the action with America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn with Mark Zanetto and my co-host on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Dan Meehan of Exit 68. All right, Dan, so I'm going to read you a couple of quotes, and then I want you to react to them. I'm sure you listened to it at some point today, as all of us rabid Husky fans do. The question was, the first question I want is, how is this what you is this what you want to see out of Hassan attacking the basket? That was the question. And Dan responded and said, yeah, listen, slow starts are not ideal. He said, obviously, he could be easily starting these games for us, but there's just something, very, very comforting about having him over there, the way he changes the game and how he's accepting that role right now for us. So that's what we need from him right now. And And that's what he's, Haas is really, really good at. And he really guarded a guy that, is not easy to guard. So what does that tell you about Haas's role and his willingness to accept that and still excel? He had 10 points and 6 assists last night.
I saw it when I went to the open practice during the summer. Hassan Diarra and Alex Karaban are 100% professionals playing in college basketball. They lead this team vocally in huddles and just by their candor throughout practice. And this is no different. Haas is taking us. He came in the year probably thinking that he was going to undoubtedly be the starting point guard in the starting five throughout the season. This is kind of his team, him and Alex's team. He's a fifth-year guy, has been on 2 championship teams in a row now. And for him to start over Mahaney, you would think he would get that nod throughout the year. But I think early in the season, he understands the grind, how you have to grow and progress throughout a college basketball season. So I think he kind of takes it upon himself as a leader, and I'm sure he had a lot of closed-door talks with Dan coming into the season. How do we three-peat? How do we bring this team up and progress the right way? Maybe he, comes off the bench the first few games. I had a friend text me last night during the game that he thought that there were definitely some conversations between Haas and Hurley discussing this, just kind of like in an open forum, like what's best for this team right now. Take this step back, maybe come off the bench for a few games, let Aiden Mahaney kind of wet his whistle and get ingrained into this team a little bit. So he's a total leader. I'm not worried about how they kind of bring this team along early in the year. It's kind of where they finish. And I think they're just kind of going through some of those motions now to kind of figure out some things. Hurley made some comments after the game that they might be tinkering with starting five with regard to the point guard position, maybe a switch with Terrace and Sampson. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think, and I got to give credit to our guy Joe Arruda and some other folks in the media room asking Dan some really good questions where he kind of like teeing him up to explain it to the fans with a couple around. Dan was talking about how we're missing Sampson on some of these lobs. I think that's part of the point guard issues and stuff like that. Is they're not getting downhill enough in creating that kind of separation where
a
the
signature play from the last 2 years. So it's
correct.
If that's not happening, he sees it on the sideline in the sixth out. So
but to Dan's point, he pointed it out like a pro and essentially said, with the guards that we just lost, whether it was Cam, Tristan, Steph, these guys, and then going back to Andre Jackson, you got 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". Yeah. There's a difference, and they have to work on their game a little bit more, and it has to be almost fine tuned where you're 6'3", 6'2", and that's a huge difference when you got a guy.
It's like a small quarterback trying to look over a tall offensive line. You got a 5'8" Kyler Murray versus a 6'4" Drake May. It's different. The line of sights are different from a 6-foot guard trying to find the holes in the defense to make that lob from Haas, whether he's 6 feet, 6'1". That's different than a Tristan Newton looking over the defense and easily seeing that pass. So,
yeah, and it's a great point, and it's also it's also a good point to point out that there are advantages and disadvantages to both, right?
Yep.
It's just I think for me, I thought that was a really telling comment, and then he got into how Terrace has gotten better, but he's tough on Terrace, and I like that because he sees what we all see, which is this guy who is a 6'10", 260-pound monster who 100% can take over games. And he thought that, a few of these fouls where he could have easily gotten an and one, should have been able to finish those. His rebounds.
Did he make a comment about that last night?
Hurley? Yeah. He said,
yeah,
two of them.
I had some texts with some friends during the game that he's just not finishing through contact the way he should be.
Yeah.
Like he's got to be dunking everything and just charging through some of these lower D1 level talents. He's big hoss, man. He's got to act like it.
Yeah, no, he literally said this. We'll go back and look at some of the things where fundamentally he got to do. He did a better job, but he's got to do a better job had 2 finishes at the rim that should have been 3-point plays that became 2 free throws. But if you look at his numbers, efficiency, his rebounds per minutes are up. All that's improved. His rim protection though has got to improve. So I love how he does that because he's not throwing anyone under a bus. He is literally just saying, nobody's perfect, and we're working to continue that perfecting these fundamentals, and he harps on that, and I love it. Last thing on this, and then we'll move on to looking ahead. someone asked him about the class that is coming in. And I wish I had the audio for this, but if you haven't heard it, go and listen to the end of his press conference. And they asked him about, what are his initial thoughts? And he said, because they asked about shooting.
Here long.
No, but also the fact that it's big guards. Like he was just like, we needed to replenish this top tier talent that we've had at UConn. And he's like, this is it. Like these 4 guys, all of them, he said every single one of them, because people even said, oh, so you're going to let Eric shoot threes? You're going to let Eric Riba shoot threes? And he said, I'll let Eric dribble up the floor, initiate offense. He can be essentially a hub at the top of the key.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just, that kind of stuff is so cool to like listen to him get excited about the future, even though he's not like taking anything away from the current season.
Of course.
So it was cool. Like, we talked about the type of people that, they want with the pedigree, but they're early entry opportunity guys, right? He's like Steph, like Hawk, like Alex. He's like, so all snipers, all premium players, positional versatility. And the last thing he said, and I'll let you comment on both, is they asked the last question I think they asked in the press conference was, what do you think of Liam tonight? And he said it almost identical to what I said. He loved his approach. Like I loved Liam's pace last night. He didn't look overly rushed. He didn't look like he was hunting offense as much as maybe some freshmen do when they first come in. Like you can tell Jaden Ross is keyed up when he comes in. Like if I can get him ratcheted down just a little bit, and he's going to be incredible. But if we can all have Liam's mentality on this team is going to be a well-oiled machine. I'll let you comment on both the class and then Liam McNeeley.
First and foremost, congrats to some of the guests we've already had on this podcast. A few of those recruits, they signed officially yesterday. So 4 of them, a loaded class across the board. Like you said, 6'5", 6'6" across the board, plus Riva, who's 7-footer. These kids can do it all. I'm really excited for that personnel. Next year, still got to get through this year. But yeah, you want to talk about replenishing through a strong recruiting class. This one's one of the most exciting ones we've had in years at UConn. I don't know if Dan made a comment after the game last night saying he doesn't think that these guys are going to be here long, but we'll see. It like we mentioned in earlier podcasts, it takes a half a season to just kind of just get ingrained in this offense, learn how it moves, learn the pieces on the team. So that takes time. So we'll see how long, whether these guys are one and dones, 2-3 year players, we'll see. But yeah, really great class. So congrats to those 4 young men. They're all high quality guys. We've had 2 of them on the show already. Hope to have the next 2 soon. But congrats to those guys. They have really great families. So excited to see them in store soon. Yeah, with regard to Terrace and some of the J. Ross and Liam, I think Liam is just so settled in already. Dan said he's the most ready freshman he's ever coached, and it shows. His pace on offense, it literally looks like Karaban 2.0, but in a freshman body. He's ready. He's played premier minutes as a high school player at a very high level. Played with Cooper Flagg. He is very unafraid. He's ready. He's played on the big stage in AAU ball, in front of big crowds during big games. So I don't think the moment is ever going to be too big for him. We'll see once we get, into the national tournament later on in the year, but yeah, you can't throw him off his game. He's plays with pace. He can do a little bit of everything. I think Hurley also mentioned last night that he wants him to dish a little bit more and kind of get the offense going and facilitate a little bit. Yep. Yeah, so we'll see how that kind of irons out. But he's learning from the best in Alex Karaban. He calls him the apprentice. So we're in good hands there. But
I would be interested to see in the future, because we've talked about these lineup combinations. If it wouldn't surprise me if they put Liam almost at the 2, and whoever takes the lead on point, whether that's non-traditional and they put Jay Ross in and no Aiden Mahaney, or if Aiden starts to kind of get it together, or if it's solo Liam, Jaden, Alex, and Terrace or Samson. I could see that in the future. And I think that's kind of the thought process there with Dan, where he wants him to come off of screens and facilitate more, like maybe through the pick and roll, through horn sets, whatever it is. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. When let's move on to the next topic, which is We have one more bye game, and then we have the Maui Invitational. I'm going to ask Dan who he's looking forward to seeing, why we're going to be jealous that we're not in Maui with like Big Larry and the rest of them, and Penfield and all the guys that I know are going. So we're going to talk about that coming up after the break. Game Time, the perfect app for grabbing last-minute tickets. I was just on there all this week getting tickets for friends and family to UNC at Greensboro Coliseum, and it couldn't have been easier. Game Time's fast and easy, has all the best prices right at your fingertips, and you can see the view from your seat. It's a fantastic platform. If you're looking to catch a game or an event, don't stress out on finding seats. Just download the Game Time app and use the checkout code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Don't miss out. Game Time has you covered on all the action. All right, thanks for being back on Locked On UConn, last segment of the program. All right, we have one more bye game left against a team that literally changed the name of their school just a couple weeks ago. It was Texas A&M Commerce. Now it's East Texas A&M. And then we get to Maui. Not to skip over an opponent, but I'm going to, because I think we're going to have the same types of results that we've had, maybe even a better start. My prediction for that East Texas A&M game is that all this talk about Aiden Mahaney is going to dissipate a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm a little choppy today. I don't know why with the video, but I think Aiden Mahaney is going to have a good game and be efficient that game. He took some good shots, some open shots that just didn't drop, and his numbers look entirely different if he makes 2 or 3 threes. And I think that's what we're going to see in this next game. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not going to breeze over any game. You know, we got to get out of it healthy before we head out to Maui.
It's true.
But Mahaney, I think you got one more game to kind of use as some headwind leading into Hawaii and try to use that to your advantage. I think, a lot of chatter last night after the game, during the game. Mahaney kind of got started slow, gets a few shots blocked. But this guy, like we chatted last night on the live reaction pod, he brings something totally different to the game than Hassan Diarra. I am not worried about Aiden Mahaney at all. He's incredible at pick and roll. They're going to find his spots and figure out, through analytics throughout the season, what situations he's best in. I think you use the next game as kind of ammunition before you head out to Maui and try to just pick some spots for Mahaney, try to get him going on a few shots early in the game. And like you said, if a couple of those threes go down last night, we're not even talking about this.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing people in the comments talking about, we should have went after Kobe Brea. I was like, did you watch Kobe Brea look overmatched against Duke? He
was a non-presence out in the game. You talk about a few guys that kind of like you don't even know if they're on the court for a 5-6 minute stretch. That was Kobe Brea. So we'll see.
Yeah, great comment by Tyler in the pod last night on one of the guys who jumped on. Aiden hasn't turned the ball over this year, so he hasn't made all his shots, but he's steady. So I think that's something that Dan can build off of. All right, the Maui Invitational. Best of luck in thoughts and prayers to missing work for all of our friends that are going out there. Yeah, it's gonna be a real tough thing to do. Who do you want to see, and who would you want to avoid right now?
We've got some good talent. I think in the Ken Pom, we've got Auburn, who's number 1 in Ken Pom. Colorado's top 100. Iowa State's top 10. We'll see what we get from Memphis. They're kind of interesting with a lot of weird stuff going on with them in the offseason. Michigan State, they played Kansas incredibly tough the other night in the Champions Classic. UNC, another strong team, and UConn. So that's a star-studded field. I would love to see – I want to see Michigan State. I have all the admiration in the world for what Tom Izzo does. They don't put a ton of guys, high-level talent into the NBA like they used to, but that team just always plays hard. They were scrappy the other night in Atlanta. These are neutral site games, so it's like you get a decent crowd, people out there having fun, but it's not like doing a home and home and seeing someone, in front of 10,000 of their own fans. So I'm always interested to see how these early season games, these teams are still figuring themselves out and who they're going to be. They're not who they are going to be right now, but we took some hints last year from early season games. It's just a good barometer and litmus test of how you face up against premier talent in neutral site games. So I would love to see Michigan State. I think Iowa State would be a really good test. Their defense is always like top notch in the country. when it shakes out at the end of the year. I would love to see, our defense has been great in the first 3 games of the season. I would love to see us and this high-powered offense, efficient offense, play against a high-level D1 defense in Iowa State. So, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I think no matter who we play, it's going to be an interesting event. But like, I do think that first game's going to be interesting because it's like Penny against Danny and the coaching. Yep. And Memphis has some talent, but they're just not coached the way that we are. And then, and I'm saying that very nicely. And then I think for me, the only team I don't want to see now that I would love to see them in March because I feel like we're going to be a different team is Auburn. Like, I feel like Auburn right now is probably playing the best basketball because Bruce Pearl, for whatever reason, his teams come out like their hair is on fire in the beginning parts of the year, but then they kind of fizzle at the end. And so
early exit in the tournament last year. That was the one team I was afraid of when I was filling out my bracket last season. They had an early exit and we didn't have to worry about it. So that kind of like lended in our favor. But Bruce Pearl, their defense is always great. And they brought back a lot of that same roster. Johnny Broome, I think, is going to win Player of the Year. And he's great awesome through 3 games. So,
yeah, he's my number 1 player in the country right now. And also they have guys everywhere who can fill it up. So for me, they're an undisciplined team compared to what we see on a regular basis, but they're damn fun to watch. And so if we do play them, let's say we play them in the final, because that's where it would be, that'd be a hell of a game. Like just as far as like entertaining goes. So
something I keep tabs on throughout the season. I like to, you don't have to put too much weight into where they are team wise in KenPom. I look for the teams, and this is just a trend that I see when filling out my brackets the last 5-6 years. The teams that are top 10, top 15 in both offense and defensive efficiency tend to be the ones that prevail late in the NCAA tournament. You see in Alabama last year, who's the number 1 offense in the country, but they're hardly top 100 in defense. Bruce Pearl's teams are always top 15 in both offense and defense, which matches up well against a UConn who's efficient on both ends as well.
It's a great point. Well, no matter what, it's going to be an interesting event. It's still a week away, and we're excited about it. But that's all we have for you on the program today. Catch me tomorrow. I'll be live from the New Horizons Coliseum before the UConn women's game, and then hopefully after for a post-game show, a live reaction show to that. And we've got some really cool stuff coming down the rest of the year, guys. Hopefully you're staying with us and checking out the audio version as well. In case you can't see these beautiful faces in front of you, you can still listen to our voices. So appreciate Dan as always. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For Mark Zanetto, Dan Meehan, stay connected. Make sure those toughness meters are rising. Go Huskies.